You're listening to Forging Fluidity with Savannah Wishart and Griffin Coombs, where we humbly navigate the idea of primal purpose, exploring conversations around physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being on the quest for a truly conscious and meaningful human experience. I'm Griffin, and my co-host is Savannah. She's a self-love expert and fine art photographer, and she uses life coaching and forest bathing photo sessions to create conscious containers for people to lean into vulnerability and explore their relationship with themselves.
And Griffin is a body awareness and breathing expert who uses targeted physical training and stress resilience coaching to help people become more physically capable and emotionally grounded.
It is 2025, and in this very first episode of this new year, we are reflecting and reviewing some of our intentions that we have personally set forth for ourselves for the upcoming year. We talk about more concrete, specific practices and approaches that we plan to implement in our personal and professional lives. We also talk about more abstract and philosophical intentions that we're bringing forth into this new year. We hope this episode inspires you to understand that what's hard for me might not be hard for you, and that while it's important to make positive changes and embrace challenges, what's even more important is to come to a deep understanding of what that means for you specifically. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome back to Forging Fluidity for our first episode in the new year, 2025, with myself and my dear co-host, Griffin Coombs, coming live from Morocco again.
Here we are, 2025, back in Africa, a new year.
Yep, very exciting. I'm back in Bellingham, which is not any different from our last episode, but I did go to Colorado for a little bit, which is a nice refresher.
And nice to be back. I feel like it's nice to be back, even though I had a lot of complaints about Morocco. But I think going away just gives us new perspective on the places we went away from. That can also apply to people and things as well, I think, but experiences.
I agree. Long distance is a love language, I think, which I don't think is true for everybody.
No, not everybody. But it's a real thing. And I was actually thinking about this a little bit earlier where, like, yes, the new year is a time where a lot of people are thinking about changing things or resetting intentions and things like that. And I think I've been partially inspired by that energy, but also more than that is the time away from Morocco and the time being in a different environment and just stripping myself away of like familiar routines and my normal living environment has played more of a role in me kind of recalibrating and resetting and deciding to come in to January differently than the whole just like typical New Year's resolution energy. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just me. It was like more of a catalyst was like I was away in the US for 2 months. Things were so different in so many ways. I came to a lot of personal realizations with family and things like that. And then the coming back here overseas happening to coincide with the new year was just a really strong motivator to get my shit together in certain ways, you know?
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So you think that you would not have the same potency of change if you had just been in Morocco for the last 2 months?
Correct.
Makes a lot of sense. I think when I've worked one-on-one with people and they really want to change their life, I always try to encourage some sort of environmental change to get out of their community, to get out of their family dynamics, like something outside of their normal daily routine or their weekly routine, because it's just those people that have always been there are going to hold on to who we've been. And
Mhm.
like when we change and we grow, it's often perceived as a threat because people are unsure of what that growth is going to look like. And a lot of times, if we're growing into a bigger, better person, then we're going to be inviting, just by the nature of us growing and choosing a different path, we invite the people in our lives to grow with us or to fall away in a
Yes.
way.
Yep, and that's scary. Both are scary for a lot of people. And yeah, a
It
lot
is
of people don't
scary.
want to have to don't want to have to choose between growing alongside you or losing you. It's like, well, can I just have the same you I've always had? It's like, well, sorry, I have to grow into the next version of me. I don't have a
Yeah.
choice. So yes,
And
that's very
to
insightful.
grow beautiful butterfly wings
Bingo. I like that.
as it in your cocoon. Yeah. I was on a webinar recently and the host was talking about like if a butterfly were to come out of its cocoon too early, it's going to die. And so
Mm.
we do need a very specific container to kind of nestle into, figure out what we want, and to the best of our ability, strip away external influences, and then we can emerge and we can come out renewed. Um, yeah, with a new direction in front of us.
That's beautiful. Is that the thing that you were going to say, but then you waited until we started recording?
No.
Okay.
So
Oh, we get more surprises. Okay.
we get more surprises. Yes. So as we were talking beforehand, as we usually do, we are just talking about the idea of talking about like resolutions versus intentions and what we are each doing to change with 2025. And one thing that I was thinking about is how so many people, they're always saying how like what we choose to see shapes our reality. And so, and I feel like people do that a lot with like talking about abundance or something. So you choose to see scarcity, so you stay in scarcity and you only see like lack. You don't see opportunities. You see things that are going to confirm your bias and keep validating the reality that you're living in. And so I just think of like if you're born into a trust fund family, for example, like your bottom line is going to be so high. And your version of being poor and struggling is probably going to be like, oh man, I only have $1 million this year. And you're not ever going to like, you won't ever allow yourself to actually go to poverty because that does not exist in your version of reality. And so I was just thinking about this with the idea of resolutions because it feels to me from what I've been seeing on social media and who I've been talking to that resolutions aren't a thing anymore. It just seems like people aren't talking about resolutions. They're not making resolutions. There's more language around setting intentions and like, oh, like new year, same you. And it seems that resolutions have just been thrown out. But I think that we like this is just reflecting that we create our reality by who we interact with and what we're talking about. And so I'm around people who are not talking about those things, that they are more evolved and they've outgrown that way of thinking. But I'm sure there still are plenty of people in the world who have made resolutions this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're just
that's
not in my reality.
right. I really like that trust fund metaphor because it's so concrete and drives the point home. Yeah, it ties into what we've talked about, just about who we surround ourselves with. And it's just like you forget that there are people who do things that you just don't do, or don't do things that you make a habit of. There are just people who just don't exercise. They just don't do anything. They don't, and it's just like, wow, I forgot about that. Like people, they don't even go on walks. I mean, nothing. And of course
Yep.
they exist. But it's just, and if you're one of those people listening, I'm not trying to ostracize you in any way. That's just not part of my reality, where at least even the people who who aren't as fit as they'd like to be are still, it's still on their brain, or they still try to get to the gym or go for a walk or a run or something when they can. And it's, but it, for like being physically active to be absolutely not even a consideration for you, that's a whole community of people that we just don't relate to. So I'm sure that kind of resolution community is the same thing. So yeah, I wanted to go to your cocoon analogy because it felt like you were setting me up for disappearing. Because
Oh, for
because
disappearing.
yeah, because I have to disappear into my cocoon.
Yes.
So yeah, but I won't
You had the
disappear from this
sacred
podcast.
pause,
Yes,
and
that's
now you have to
right.
disappear.
Yeah, the sacred pause was insightful, and I have to disappear, and disappear obviously doesn't mean literally disappearing, but it's going into the cocoon. It is having a very clear desire about what I want to accomplish with my presence on social media, and drawing a boundary at that point. You know, like one of the things, it's not, I guess this is a difference between a resolution and what I'm feeling, I'm not sure. But like, it's just like, my resolution is like only X amount of time per day or per week on Instagram. And for
Yeah.
me, that's not, it's not good enough because it doesn't tackle what's beneath the surface of why I am on Instagram and why I've let Instagram sort of take over a lot of my life in the past, let's say, half a year or so, where, I guess I'll just share this with our audience. It was like, it started as knowing Instagram is just not super healthy for me. I know now that I'm fairly driven by dopamine. And I would use it for work because I know that I need a social media presence to promote my services. And then that kind of just became an excuse to be on there. And even when I have been posting for professional reasons, it was almost like I cared, at least subconsciously, cared more about the validation that I was getting from people as a professional, not, not typical just likes for being silly or for being sexy or whatever. It's like, I want people to think of me highly as a coach, as a thought leader in my field. And that was like the driving force, where maybe on the conscious level, I was sort of tricking myself into believing that the driving force was business. I needed, it's a tool to market my business, but it wasn't a super successful tool. Like, it wasn't, the amount of time I was spending there was not proportionate to, it wasn't yielding results, it wasn't turning over, converting clients or anything like that. So, and it was taking a lot of my energy, and I'm already feeling way better just disappearing a little
Ooh.
bit more from Instagram. I'm still posting the same amount, but my intention for this is to open Instagram with intention, with a very clear intention, where it's like, I'm going to post this, or I'm going to check for DMs only and deal with my DMs, and that's it. I'm not looking at other people's content. I'm disappearing from Instagram in that sense, where I'm hanging out there. Yeah, so that in a sense of, because when people think disappearing, I heard that from an interview or a podcast from Dan Coe, a productivity guy I've been following lately, where it's just like, you you can disappear for 3 months, 6 months to build what you got to build. And just disappearing, that can sound really extreme, but I don't think that's what it means. I think more of what I just described is disappear from the things that aren't serving you, not because you have to be a hermit in order to accomplish anything, but because if things that aren't helping you like go where you want to go are still playing a major role in your life, you probably don't really want them or need them. So it's like, my question to
Yeah.
myself was like, what do I need to disappear from? It's not everything and everyone. It's just the stuff that's standing in my way, and to be courageous enough to disappear from them and to trust
Yeah.
that you don't need them. So Instagram would be an example of that.
Yeah. And I think like it's almost like trimming away parts of a plant where you're losing nutrients so that the nutrients can go to where the plant needs it the most.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's
Makes
it.
that makes me want to disappear, but like full hermit disappear.
Well, that's you have that one line in your human design, so that would make a little
Yes.
bit more sense.
Yep.
But yeah, and I love that, man. Your nature analogies are just feeding
Plants and
my
animals and
yeah.
bugs.
I love it. So I'm gonna share one more one more change that I've made, and then I want to hear about what 2025 might mean to you as well. But I just have to keep going because this analogy was too perfect. The trimming the plants, which was which was restructuring my day, and so that energy can go where it needs to go, and trimming off unnecessary stuff. Where it's like, what was my day like? You know, it was all chaos when I was in the U.S. because nothing was stable. But before then, it's like, you know, wake up, have my coffee, maybe do a morning meditation. I was trying to get into the visualization stuff a little bit. And then I would either go to the gym or I would go to a client. And those are things that for certain people, that's like going to the gym first thing in the morning is a great thing, because that's the hardest thing of their day. And they've got to get it done with and make sure they do it, and no excuses. And while psychic entropy is low, before things descend into chaos, before you have less room for failure, you get that hard thing done at the beginning of the day. But for me, the gym is not the hard thing. The gym,
Yeah.
that's just a part of my life. It's like brushing my teeth. I'm not going to not do it. So the hard thing is deep work, is figuring out what is a substantial thing that I want to build, and actually committing to the long-term process of building something. I told you at the beginning of our call before we hit record that I'm so impatient with long-term, playing the long game. Part of it's the dopamine, the instant gratification, but it's like when I'm excited about something, I want to do it. I want to launch it. I don't want to lay the groundwork for it. It feels like it takes too long. I want to get in there. I'm a performer at heart. I want to get on stage, the metaphorical stage, and make the thing happen and do it. And so sitting and building out something that's going to take weeks, months to create and then implement and advertise and whatever, that's easy for me to resist and avoid. And that's what I've been resisting and avoiding. And that's the stuff that I know is going to bring me a lot of fulfillment. It's going to bring me more of the financial freedom that I need, and it's going to move me forward in every way, whereas it's much easier when you have something concrete like a client. Like, this is somebody I have to go to. I'm obligated to plan their session and work with them at this specific time. It's easy to prioritize that and let that distract you from the deeper, less tangible. Like, you have to, if you're building something, and you know this as a creator, it's like you're a slave to your own lack of systems if you don't have any. You know, you can
Yeah.
It's hard to get your shit together sometimes. So it's much easier when you have something concrete like a client or a single event to plan for, to just prioritize that. And then if that takes all your energy, all that psychic entropy starts to grow, and the day goes on, you're not going to be motivated to sit down and do the stuff that takes a lot of deep thought and consideration and all of that stuff. So I have restructured my day where I wiped out clients in the morning. And luckily, the clients I have that I was doing in the morning are happy to change to the afternoons. But my mornings are for me. My mornings, I'm working for myself. I'm getting up and I'm sitting there and I'm tackling the hard problems, and I'm figuring out direction and strategy, and I'm building things that are hopefully going to have a lasting impact for a lot of people. And then I can go to the gym. Then I can do clients. And it's only been like a week being here and doing that, but it doesn't just feel more productive, it feels more empowering, because I am choosing to start my day and prioritize myself and my work above everything else, which for me just feels good, because I haven't had the courage or the wherewithal or the depth of understanding of where I am to be able to do that until now. So cheers to 2025, the year of disappearing, the year of creating and prioritizing that. But that was a lot of Griffin's voice. Let's hear Savannah's voice.
Well, I mean, I love it because the one thing that the first thing we connected on was like morning routines and the sacredness of that morning time for just being with ourselves. And so it's coming full circle. I think for both of us, because do something with, I don't know, that's not focused on myself in my space. So I've been inspired to come back to that sacred morning space, and to give myself permission to just work on the deep work until like maybe 2 p.m, and then I can go into like go to a run or something like that, and also be focused a little bit more on cocooning and disappearing. Which I want to rewind a little bit to what you said about the disappearing with the social media example, because you mentioned like, you don't just want to be like, oh, I'm going to only be on social media this many hours a day and cut it down, and that's kind of my resolution. And to me, I see that as a good example of a resolution, because it's focusing on it's like a Band-Aid solution. It's not addressing the root of the problem. It's very superficial. And that's a big problem, I think, with resolutions, is like, oh, I'm going to lose weight. Oh, I'm going to be on my phone less. I'm going to, like, even if you define like a weight that you want to get to, or like your phone can tell you how much screen time you have, like, it still is just, that is measurable, but like, why? What is the emotional drive behind it? And what is the emotional fix that you need to look at under a microscope to figure out, like, okay, maybe I am not losing weight because I have emotions tied to food. And what am I trying to self-soothe by eating cake? And so looking at that, rather than just like, oh, I just need to go burn myself out at the gym until I inevitably fail, and then I'm back on the couch again. So I do think that was a good example, like just a very simple, less time on the phone to me is a resolution, but actually like looking under the surface like you're doing and putting intention behind it, and just changing completely, like recalibrating your strategy to how you approach social media. So it's not just quantity, it's quality, and there's a how behind it. So that to me is more of like an intentional change. that is not a resolution. So I just wanted to go back to that quickly.
Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yeah. And then let's see, everything else, yeah, is great. I think the disappearing piece, I am kind of with you with that. I did my main thing. I did two things, I guess. Well, I've done a few things. Is I'm trying to figure out my word for the year, because usually I'll have a word of the year, and that word can guide me. And then I'll name my year a name, and then I pulled an animal tarot card this year as well. So I have three things, I guess. My naming the year is, let me just find my note. Oh, so my word actually is Sophrosine, which is, it's a Greek goddess and concept that I really like. And now I'm building, my epiphany that came to me over the last week is to build a self-love movement and a revolution called the Sophrosine Way. And I'm very excited about it. So it's going to be, it's kind of, I just was able to step into a place of confidence of something, an idea that I've had and how I want to lead people and the people that I want to surround myself with, and realizing that I can build that community. And so having Sophrosine as my word, then just that can be my anchor point for making sure that I stay on the path, and I can be authentic to what I am creating every day. So just for people that don't know what it is a Greek concept, and it's actually a goddess who I never had heard of. But it's a healthy state of mind characterized by self-control, moderation, and a deep awareness of one's true self, resulting in true happiness. And I came across that word a while ago, and I thought, oh, this is everything that I want to build and represent. It's so perfect. And I was like, that is such a hard word. Like, that is not easy. How am I going to just tell people, like, oh, search the Socrates way? Like, I need to spell it out for everyone. But it's just stuck. And so that is, I'm rolling with it. That's what it is. And then to name my year, I did a workshop that my friend Traver Boehm, he runs the Man Uncivilized movement. And every year he does a workshop mid-December that is to figure out naming your year. And it's supposed to have like a cool, epic title, like a movie or something. And 2 years ago, my year was the year of reclaiming the wild woman. Last year was the year the roots reach water. And this year is the year the arrow points inward. And so how it works is you go through these exercises and write all this stuff down, and I'll just write a page of the single words that I want in my life, or energies, or whatever intentions. And then I just kind of sit with them for a while, like maybe a few weeks. And the first time I was doing this, it came to me like pretty soon after the video call, I think, or the webinar. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's silly. Like, I already am so hermity and focused on myself. Like, I don't need more of arrows pointing inward. But over the last week, that is what it is. Like, I just can tell, like, nothing else has come to me. And it feels like, well, I guess this is it. So what that is going to look like for me, it's kind of like disappearing as well. And it's taking away influence that I have in Bellingham, and I can feel this inner difference between being in Colorado and be here, because in Colorado I didn't have mountain biking, I didn't have like the snow sports, backcountry access. And so I didn't have my friend circle. So I just had to be at home with my dog and with my family, and just like be focused on work stuff. And I also just felt like we talked about this before, like something needs to be obliterated this year because just things really need to change in a big way. And yeah, so then Colorado, I was able to remove distractions, really focus on work. And I just felt so much more like myself to be focused inward and to not have a bunch of distractions around me of fun things to do. Because that is a new thing for me the last couple of years. And I still am figuring out how to manage like invitations and saying no to adventures. So now that I'm back, I can feel the pull again. It's like, oh, you need to go out and be social with people. You need to go do stuff. And like as an introvert, it is draining and I have to limit that. And I've become more aware of just being okay with my inner circle of a few different friends and that they're going to always be there and I don't need to do something every day with people and also looking at the human design stuff, becoming more aware that a there is a lot of processing and internal stuff that I need to focus on. And if I don't process, and I like to say to people that I need to titrate between things and have buffers of time, then if I don't have that time, I just like get frazzled and stressed and stuff. So yeah, it's the year the arrow points inward. So building that revolution of self-love and self-discipline, and also recognizing, we were talking about leadership styles before and how we show up in the world. And there is in the self-love world, it's very, to me, what I see, it's very soft and squishy and like overly compassionate and like, you do you and do whatever you want and it'll be fine. And you don't have to do things if you don't want to. And I realized that I've almost like fallen into that trap of feeling like, oh, I can only be nice as a leader and as a coach, but I'm going to call you out on your bullshit as well, because that is, it's both. Like you cannot love yourself if you give yourself everything you want. There has to be restriction. You have to cut away things that do not serve you. You have to do hard things. And those are acts of self-love. So as far as like recognizing my leadership style and stepping more into that, it's like, yes, you can be loving and you can be supported, and you need someone who's going to call you on your bullshit and make you grow in it and doing it in a loving way. But there has to be that discipline in order to access that. And so, which is perhaps a controversial take on it, but fully stepping into the balance of compassion and a more militant discipline, because that has always been something that has felt very aligned with me. So yeah, 2025.
Heck yeah. I am hearing that the arrow turning inward isn't so much disappearing or hermiting or cocooning or whatever, but more like honoring just the way that's healthy for you to show up in the world, in your life, and inward being more of like a figuring out and honoring, if that makes sense, where it's just like, okay, I'm not going to disappear from social events, but I'm going to pay very close attention to what's inside and how many social events or how I show up to social events or what role they play in my life that's going to honor what's on the inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just using social events as an example.
Yeah, I think being more tuned into myself of like doing the check-in with myself to see where's my battery at, and being more aware of what I need to do to charge that battery.
Yep, that makes complete sense. Because when that battery, well, I think something we have in common is that we want to make sure the energy of that battery is going to the right things. And
Yeah.
there's really no way to know if it's going to the right things if we don't have a sense of what it feels like when the battery is full versus when it's drained and what's draining it, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think
Yep.
that's really great. And there's something else I wanted to say about, the leadership style. I think that's also something where kind of aligned with, or we're experiencing similar things, where it's a resolve to accept ourselves as leaders, because we are leaders. We lead people in different ways, coaching and etc. And it's like, where there is in the self-love space, as you mentioned, but also just like in coaching spaces in general. Like, yes, there is a subset where people are more like tough love, but I just feel like all of society is moving to the soft side a little bit. And so it's just like, there's been this almost pressure I talked to you about before we hit record a little bit, of like, if I'm a coach, I have to come across as nurturing and understanding and compassionate. And by the way, I think all of those things I am, and you are too, but it doesn't have to manifest as this like warm, fuzzy demeanor, or in your professional voice. And I think accepting ourselves as a little bit tougher style leaders is going to attract the people that want to work with us, and the people that we want to work with as well. Where it's like,
Yeah.
I don't, if I have to soften everything I say with a smile or a glimmer in my eye to show you that, don't worry, I'm a nice coach, I'm not going to bite your head off. Well, I'm not going to bite your head off. I'm a very understanding, very compassionate coach. But if you don't understand that, if it takes me softening my image to the point of like sunshine and rainbows for you to not fear me, well, then we probably shouldn't work together anyway. So I think we'll both be
Yeah.
stepping into our power as leaders and motivators in the way that we do it, which is, a little bit fiery in a good way.
Yeah. Yep. And I think just, I don't know, there's so much right now that is feeding the idea of unconditional acceptance of who people are. And there's lack of
Tell me about it.
responsibility, lack of personal responsibility to be held to a higher standard, to do the work. And I was just thinking, like, we've talked about mental health stuff before, and I've become more educated and understanding of my nervous system for over like years. But there's something in the last couple of months that really clicked for me, of, because if people don't know, I have struggled with like depression and anxiety since I was like 14. And I never made that my identity. I never put that label on myself of, this is who I am. I am sick, because I don't want that to be seen as a disability. And people see that as a handicap and a disability and a piece of their identity that they can hide behind. And yes, there are people who like, they need medication, and like, it is really dark and deep. And I have gone to those dark and deep places, and I crawl out. When I was 17, I decided that I would just naturally treat myself with supplements. And I've just always been of the mindset that it's not something that's broken. It's a different way of experiencing the world and life. And there is treasure to be found in those really dark places. And then I don't know, there's just information there. But most recently, I realized that because usually with the nervous system responses, you have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I always thought, oh, I'm a flight tendency because I dissociate, I leave my body, And until the last couple of years, I would just like jump on a plane and fly away. So it was just easy to to go into that flight mode. And then in the last couple months, I noticed that when I was feeling kind of like I was leaning into depression, I would just start to shut down. I would start to pull away, and I would stop making eye contact with people. My voice would become very monotonous, and I just something made me realize like, oh, my nervous system response is going into freeze mode. And so I had this kind of epiphany of like, oh, maybe it is depression. The symptoms are that of depression, but there's something I can do about this in a different way because it is the nervous system freezing. So I just wrote up this whole thing about like, maybe your mental health is not your identity, and there's something that you can do about addressing your nervous system. And so anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but just going into like this whole culture of, you must accept me unconditionally. Like, no, like you need to do the work for yourself and for the people around you. And if you don't have people who are holding you to a higher standard and calling you on your bullshit, then maybe you should find those people.
Absolutely.
I don't want to should on you, but
yeah, no, I get it. And it's hard for some people to separate this from, let's say, pure judgment, which it's not. It's simply that it's simply an acknowledgement of that you are not going to help yourself by adopting that mentality. That's all. It's like if you're not happy, I want you to be happy. And I know how easy it is to fall into kind of a victim mentality, but it's just not going to make you any happier. It's going to make you more miserable. And so, yeah, I don't want to should on anyone, but it's just like, that's the path to helping yourself. It reminds me, when I was teaching music, I had a new colleague. He was younger than I was, and I was young. But he was like fresh out of college, and it blew me away how he was a really astute, insightful guy, because there was a kid, we were music teachers, so this was like a band kid who was just really having a hard time with his friends, and he was difficult to deal with. Like, he was very high and low and sort of erratic, and he always came crying to his friends and wanted them to feel bad for him, and after he did something shitty, like wanted them to re-accept him, and he was struggling. He went to the band teacher for advice, and the band teacher was talking to me about it, about, what do I do? How do I deal with this kid? Whatever. And I asked him what he thinks, and he was like, well, I think he's asking his friends for basically asking them for unconditional love. And that's not the job of his friends. That's the job of his mother. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, that's it. Like, it's nobody's job but your mother, and maybe not even your mother for some people, depending on, your situation. But it's like the only person who owes you any unconditional love is a parent when you're a child. Like, nobody owes you unconditional anything when you are an adult. So it's just, again, not trying to judge anyone, just saying like you're going to drive yourself crazy searching for unconditional acceptance from people who don't owe it to you, and therefore don't have it for you. Well, we lost Savannah, but that's okay. We're going to continue. So that's 2025. That's how we're starting off. Let's bring this energy, and I'm talking to all our listeners now, let's bring this energy forward throughout the year. We'd love to hear about your 2025 intentions, how they've gone so far, what your plans are, if any of this resonated with you, or you feel similarly or different about anything that we've said. Let us know. See you next time. Thanks for listening.